We have reached the what I call the best weekend of the football season. It's divisional playoff weekend. We got 4 games Saturday, Sunday. We're talking all about them all from a DFS perspective. And we have a podcast host grudge match this weekend. Looking forward to it. Happy Friday morning, all. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, the Friday morning DFS version. If you could please rate and review the podcast. I know I say that a lot, but it's getting the end of the season. If you do enjoy listening to us, have helped you out this year, definitely leave us a good review, some good stars. That would be greatly appreciated. Ryan, before we get into being enemies for the weekend, how is everything on your end from a friend perspective?
Yeah, everything's great. Hard not to be great after the Packers win last weekend.
You couldn't even go a sentence. You couldn't even go a sentence without mentioning that team.
No, I mean, kind of been happy all week about it.
Yeah, it was I think incredible performance.
Yeah, like in anybody, Packers, in our wildest dreams, I don't think we expected that performance. I mean, Jordan Love has been good for a while now, but that was something different. The Packers have had a string of great quarterbacks for a long time, and it looked like Jordan Love might be the next one in line. So that was encouraging. I wasn't expecting a Packers 49ers matchup, so it feels kind of like we're free rolling. It's kind of tough to expect to go in there and win with how good San Francisco's look, but it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, it's funny because I obviously am a Niners fan. I went into this figuring that if everything went to form and Detroit and Dallas won, I felt pretty good against Philly or Tampa Bay. Like, I think Philly was – we had talked about them. I think they were – I think we're kind of wondering maybe they flip a switch. But, I mean, we obviously saw last weekend they were dead. They've quit on the season. So I felt pretty good against Tampa or Philly. I was worried about the Rams. I was worried about Dallas in the second round. But, man, watching that Packers game, there's no way you can't take this team seriously. Like, I think I sent you a – email in like the second after the pick 6, I just wrote damn. I was like, it's one of those things like you see the 17 where you're like, oh, I wonder what happened. Was it fluky? Did a bunch of breaks go their way? Like, they had a couple of turnovers, but like they just kicked Dallas's butt. Like, there was no doubt about who the better team was on the field that day. It was impressive on both sides of the ball. It should be fun. I mean, I think that I think the Niners are a different animal than Dallas, both in a lot of different ways. I think that they will definitely score the ball, but if I was a Packers fan, I feel pretty good that the Packers are going to score some points too.
Yeah. I mean, they were flawless on offense last week, throwing the ball and running the ball. They're going to have to score points, though, to keep up with the 49ers. I agree. Yeah. I think the Niners are going to score for sure, as where Dallas, there was always – I said last week, Dallas is Dallas, and you can get those kind of games sometime with San Fran. Yeah, it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, I kind of apologized a bunch for Dak this year. I thought he was really good. He was horrible on last weekend. Like, he was legit bad in that game. A lot of that was Detroit played well on defense, but man, Dak was legit bad in that game. It was pretty wild. But
it was great this year, and I had finally got on board with Dak. A few weeks ago, it looked like he was going to win the MVP, and then
he's probably going to finish third. The voting doesn't count in the playoffs. He's probably going to finish third behind Lamar and Christian McCaffrey, but he's right there and he's earned it. But that was rough. But let's get into this week's slate. I love this week. You still got 4 games. You got games on both days, which is really nice. You can do 7 hours of football each day if you want. But you're down to the best of the best. So I like this weekend more than next weekend. We only get 2 games. I like it more than the weekend before because usually in wildcard weekend you get a couple teams like in Pittsburgh was tough to watch. There's just no way around that. But we've got 4 games. We're gonna call them all one slate. All the biggest contests on Fanduel, Draftkings, and Yahoo seem to be for the whole slate. So we'll do the 4-game slate here, talking DFS. But let's hit the games first. We mentioned Niners Packers off the bat. That's the highest total this week too. We got a 50.5 on the playoff game this week, which is nice. Niners fared by a big number, 9.5. Feels a little too high to me, but I get it. Week off. Niners O versus Packers D is a pretty mismatch, big mismatch if you look at like DVOA numbers, stats, everything like that. But 50.5. Do you think for DFS purpose, do you think this is going to be as shootouty as the Vegas total is?
Oh, it's tough to say. If the Packers offense, plays anywhere close to as good as they did last week, then yes, because I think the Niners will score for sure. Yeah. maybe get the Packers chasing the game and they catch up. Yeah, I agree with the total. It makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does too. I mean, I think the key for the Packers is running the ball. Like if they can run the ball, they're going to be able to run play action, and they're gonna hit some big plays in the Niners. The Niners pass D is really good, but they get still susceptible to some big shot plays. The Packers got young, athletic guys running all over the field. Like all the last week was so weird because like Jaden Reed didn't have a catch in that game. Like if you told me Jaden Reed didn't have a catch, I'd be like, oh my god, did Green Bay get killed? Like, but Romeo Doubs went for $150, and Wicks scored. Musgrave hit the big play. They've got weapons. I think it's a matter if they can run the ball though. If the Niners can shut down the run and make them one dimensional, I think it'll be tough on Love, and you'll see some stuff there. But if they can run the ball and Aaron Jones looks as good as ever, I think that's the key. They can run the ball a little bit. They can run play action, and they can really get some points going. I think the Niners should be able to do a lot on offense. I think the key is just not turning the ball over. If Brock can avoid mistakes, they can avoid fumbles. I think they should be able to move the ball. So I think the total's in line there too. I agree with you there. Second game on Saturday. The early game is Texans Ravens. Another one. We got Baltimore favored by 9. Both 1 seeds are big favorites week. Over under is the lowest on the week. So we got Saturday. We got the lowest total and the highest total, 43.5. I tell you what though, for a game with a 9-point spread though, it's a fun, intriguing game. I think seeing CJ Stroud go against this defense is great. It's great fun for any football fan.
Yeah, he certainly did fine against the Browns' tough defense last week. Wow, Stroud's been impressive. Yeah, this game, the Ravens, I think they were probably the best team in the regular season.
I won't. By the way, I won't argue that. So they have that crown right now for sure.
Dominated San Francisco in a statement game, and then
I said I agreed. You didn't need to go there.
Yeah, no, sorry. And then Lamar threw 5 touchdowns against the Dolphins a couple weeks ago. Yeah, for DFS, I think I don't want to overlook the Texans. I definitely did last week, being on Flacco and instead of Stroud. That was, in hindsight, pretty bad. But anyways, I think maybe the Texans just sort of run out of steam here. I think the Ravens have looked so good and better on offense than I can ever remember a Lamar team. So I just feel like they're going to score points here. Again, Stroud, maybe it's kind of similar to that like Packers game. Like Love can be good enough to keep them around. Stroud is that good where he could just carry them, I guess. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the Stroud and Love thing is they do have some commonality there. It seems like these are two teams that have 1,000% found their quarterback. I mean, these might be the two best young guys in the league right now. If you go really, really young, and I know Love's been in the league longer, but still, first year really, really playing. Weather is doesn't seem like too big of an issue. It is going to be really cold in Baltimore, but doesn't seem like there's going to be precipitation to be a problem. There is a little bit of rain in the Niners game, by the way. I think it's going to be, the temperature's not promised, but like high 50s, but there should be a little bit of rain there. Baltimore's going to be cold, but I think it's going to be okay weather-wise. So maybe that helps them a little bit. But I just think that, the Texans going outside, going on the road, going against this Baltimore team, it's just it's a tough setup. Baltimore's really good. They're really good on both sides of the ball. You mentioned their offense. Like I just feel their offense is more balanced and they have so many weapons. Mark Andrews is going to be back this week, it sounds like, too. Full participant in practice. I don't know how much he'll play, how effective it'd be, but like clearly that's someone they have to account for, and that helps a lot. You got Flowers, you got OBJ, you got all the other guys, Bateman in there, and then the running backs are not great, but they run a bunch of guys out there. Lamar out of the backfield. They just have so many ways to beat you, and they're so smart too, both on offense and on defense. I think that I thought last week the Browns would kind of make Stroud make some mistakes. I was clearly wrong there, but I just think being at home, being inside that building, helped them out so much this week. The Browns defense does not travel, as we've learned over the course of the year. I find it hard to see the Texans hanging this game too, but I'm sure going to look forward to seeing Stroud and see what happens with these guys, because I'm done discounting that guy for sure.
Yeah, they've had 2 massive games in a row, basically a playoff game against the Colts 2 weeks ago, and then a huge game against the Browns. Like, can they get up for another one? It's tough when you got a young team, and not just get up for a game, but against probably the best team in the league. So kind of agree with the spread and the totals there.
Man, D'Amico Rhymes is a hell of a hire, though. He is. I love that dude.
He's awesome. Yeah.
especially coming for the Niners. I liked him as it was, but you never know how a head coach can be, especially a defensive-minded head coach. And man, he's gotten those guys going. And Bobby Slowick running stuff on offenses. I wouldn't be shocked if he got a job this year. It might be 1 year off him being a head coaching job, but he might get a job right away. We move to Sunday. I think Sunday, I give me night for you, late afternoon for me is kind of the market game. But let's start with Sunday morning because I actually think this is the game that I feel pretty good about going over the total. Bucks Lions. Lions are favored by 6.5. Obviously, great story. Detroit, first playoff win in 31 years, first playoff home game in 30 years. You got people crying in the stands. There's been a lot of interviews with really old dudes that didn't know they were going to see another playoff win this week. It's been really fun. It has like a little bit of a Cubs vibe to it when they made that run. Over under 49.5. I like this game from a scoring perspective. It's indoors. There's no weather concerns. The other 3 games are all outdoors. We've got to talk about weather. This game's indoors on a turf. The Lions can really score at home. It was that game last week was really good with the Rams, but it was weird. Like both teams were scoring. The kind of the second half, they kind of slowed down. Rams had 7 field goals. Detroit offense kind of sputtered a little bit. Somehow that game went under. I know it was flying early, and I was like, I told everybody it was gonna be a shootout, and then it wasn't as much of one. But the key here, I think, is I think the Bucks can score too. I think the Lions really struggle against big passing plays, and that's what Tampa wants to do is hit some big ones. Mike Evans should have had a huge game last week, dropped that long touchdown pass. I think this game goes over the total, and from a DFS perspective, I feel like it's no one's really going to talk about this game very much, and I know the total's 4.5, so that there'll be some players there, but I feel like this game kind of goes under the radar in terms of like the NFL talk about this game. I think this game goes over. I kind of like pieces on both sides here.
Yep, I agree with pretty much everything you said. Just another one of those Ford Field games that has a good chance to shoot out. Baker Mayfield's been great recently. I mean, he was great against the Eagles and a couple weeks ago against the Packers. 30-plus fantasy points in both those games. The Lions defense has been worse against the pass than against the run. So, yeah, you can really see it shooting out. And for DFS, I think with the exception of Amon-Ra, no one really is going to be popular in that game. So, I think it makes sense for DFS. I like it better than the other game on Sunday, just in terms of which one might shoot out. I would have, that Lions-Rams game, after in the first or second quarter, I would have bet the house that it was going to go over.
Yeah. Oh, I was bragging to him. Like I said 38-35 on a podcast this week, and everybody's like, oh, that's a really good call. And I was like, oh, not so much. It was, I was chirping early and chirping less late, which is often the case with me. But yeah, it was, I was surprised how it slowed down. But I mean, if the Rams score a couple touchdowns instead of field goals, like it goes over. Matthew Stafford was awesome in that game, but it just showed the Lions stopping the pass is a tough thing. And, just because they got field goals at the end doesn't mean that much to me. I think Tampa's going to score in this game. I think Detroit's going to definitely score in this game too, but I think Tampa's going to score. Should be able to see a lot of passing. I think that, both teams are pretty tough against the run. I think we see a lot of passing. I think there's all the receivers are in play. The quarterbacks are in play. Jahmyr Gibbs is definitely in play. He's catching balls out of the backfield. Rashad White's in play, doing a lot of stuff too. I think there's a lot of things that, if I'm the Lions, I'd probably play, kind of deeper pass D. Don't let them beat me deep and kind of make Rashad White beat me. But I don't know if they'll do that. That's what I would do if I were them. Aaron Glenn's a good defensive coordinator. I think they'll have a good plan. But it should be a fun game. I'm looking forward to this game more than I kind of thought I was when the matchup first came out.
Yeah, me too.
And holy hell did Philadelphia just lay down. It's unbelievable. Just the fact that we were 10-1 and ended up like this, it's one of the more shocking second half of seasons we've had in a long time.
Yeah, what a collapse. And it wasn't like sudden either.
And like all around collapse. It's not like, their quarterback got out for the year and that's why they got bad. Like they just got bad. They were banged up a little bit, but they just got bad. They just couldn't tackle. I mean, watching Ray Lewis, he was on the Manning cast. I don't know if you saw it in the clips, but he was watching when it was Trey Palmer, I think, at the long touchdown, and like Bradbury missed tackle, and like two guys took bad lines. And Ray Lewis, you could just tell, was like disgusted as a defender who could tackle. He just like couldn't believe there was an NFL playoff team that was tackling quite like that. They seemed like they just quit.
Yeah, and they were supposed to have one of the best defenses in the league. At least that's what people thought last year, the beginning of this year. Hurts, one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and then both. Yeah, very surprising.
It was, and now Jason Kelsey is going to retire. It looks like it's interesting to see what they do if they keep Sirianni and all that kind of stuff. But last game of the day is the one that's a really close spread. Bills favored by 2.5, 3, depending where you shop. Home against the Chiefs, and this is like the marquee game here. We got the quarterbacks, we got the girlfriends of Kelsey and Josh Allen. We got some famous girlfriends in there. Everybody's talking about that. But Chiefs Bills favored by 3, over under 45.5. Kind of wild. This is the second lowest total game. I think that this game happens last year, the year before. The total was like 56 or something crazy. We got some weather there. It looks like it's not going to be snowing in Buffalo, but 17 degrees. The craziest thing to me of last weekend, and there's a lot of blowouts last weekend, but the craziest thing to me last weekend was you looked at Miami and Kansas City, and it was obviously whatever it was, minus 20 wind chill. And you see Miami, and they set their game plan because they thought the weather was going to be so bad. Like they're throwing 3-yard passes, they can't even complete those. And Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes just played normal. Like there was nothing going on. Like Mahomes threw it a ton. I know he wasn't super efficient, but like throwing the ball downfield, like their offense didn't really look that much different than it was most weeks. Whereas Miami on this side looked like they were running a completely different called offense that they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to handle this weather. Tua could do anything. I was amazed by how just normal Kansas City looked.
Yeah, me too. And certainly that was the right call. You know, I mean, it was cold, and that was pretty much it. So it's going to be cold this weekend, and not nearly as cold. You said 17. Might get up to 20. I saw. Yeah, so not supposed to be much precipitation, not too windy. So it should be a pretty normal game, but still not sure we're going to have a shootout. These teams played in Week 14. The Bills won 20-17. I think this game might play out similarly. Both teams try to grind it out. Of course it can shoot out with how talented the quarterbacks are, but I don't know. I don't think either team really wants to get into that at this point.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs defense is legit really good too. The Bills play good defense, but man, they are so banged up. Like it got to the point last week where you're like, do they have anybody left to play? Apparently the guy that led their team in tackles was going on vacation that weekend because he wasn't going to be in the practice squad, and they called him back up on Thursday. I think it was AJ Klein is his name. He was going to Key West on vacation, had to cancel. Like, it's crazy for a playoff game. The guy leads you in tackles. So I think that a lot that matters here is the Bills' injury report. They've got a couple guys that are coming back. They have a couple guys that are questionable still, going to give it a shot. But, man, how banged up they are is really the key to this game, I think. If they can kind of stay on the field and get the guys back they need to, I think it's going to be a really good game. I'd be worried about them on defense if they have any more injuries or some of these guys can't come back. I think they're right on that edge of being able to like feel the defense they can play in this game.
Yeah, I mean you said it.
I think Josh Allen has to play great for them to win this game, and he obviously can. Like I think it'll be a fun game. It'll be close, but I think Josh Allen has to play exceptionally well in this game.
It's kind of what I expect.
Yeah, I actually do too. I think that they can absolutely win this game. They're favored for a reason. They're at home. Josh Allen's awesome. We've talked about him plenty, but I think he's got to be awesome on Sunday.
Yeah, me too. Definitely worried about the Bills' defense. But the Kansas City's offense hasn't been the same one that we're used to. I just think we saw 2 straight weeks with 25 plus touches for Pacheco, 24 carries last week. If they get a leader, it's close. I think they're just going to want to hand it to Pacheco.
Yeah.
Short passes to Kelsey. So, I think regardless, the Bills stay in the game, and then it gives Josh Allen, a chance to just win it on his own. One of those Josh Allen Superman games. I don't know. I think I feel like there's a little better chance that he does it than Mahomes does it. I don't know. I guess I trust him a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense to me, especially how this year played out. And even Mahomes last week looked good, but you look at the stats, you're like, oh, 1 touchdown pass, wasn't that efficient, bunch of incompletions. However, his receivers just kill him every week. Like it's just McCole Hardman didn't find the ball. It should have been a touchdown. It was just his receivers are maddening to watch. But let's get into the players. We're here to talk some DFS. We'll get into the players here. There's only 4 games, so we'll get through this pretty quick. But there's a lot of big name guys to talk about. But first, a note from our sponsors at Circa. Get ready for the ultimate big game parties at Circa Resort and Casino. Super Sunday is in Las Vegas this year. Watch the big game poolside and Stadium Swim's big game viewing party. Massive screen, booming game sound, and a view of the pyrotechnic and visual effects throughout the game. Snag the best seat in the sun with day beds, poolside boxes, cabanas, and more. Or touchdown at the world's largest sportsbook, Circa Sports, for the big game bash. 3 stories of football glory featuring a 78 million pixel screen. Book your seat with a variety of reservation options, including bottle service, open bar, stadium-style food, and more. Don't miss these legendary viewing experiences on February 11th. The big game parties only at Circa Resort and Casino. Reserve today at circalasvegas.com. So, Ryan, when we're building a DFS roster, we got to figure out which quarterback we want, who we're going to stack him with. There are a lot of quarterbacks in this weekend. By the way, 7 of them are first-round draft picks. One of them is not. I think we can probably figure out who that one is. But we got big-name guys here. I mean, I don't know how you feel about Baker Mayfield, but most of these guys are big-name guys. We got Allen and Mahomes in that game. We got the young guys in Love and Stroud. We've got Purdy, who has been great. I think people are still a little hesitant after that Baltimore game. And you got the MVP, you got Lamar, you got Jared Goff. What are you doing at quarterback this week? Where do you kind of find yourself leaning? What game are you attacking here? What are you doing at quarterback?
7 first rounders. Wow. I think the best one is probably the only one who wasn't a first rounder. At least the best one for DFS. I think it's Purdy.
Okay.
Have interest in a few of these QBs for sure, but starting with Purdy, him the most. The Niners have a 30.5 point implied total or something. Draftkings just sort of refuses to price Purdy up. It feels like he should be a little bit more expensive. I think part of that might be he's just so efficient, and projections and numbers might not think you can keep that efficiency up, but I certainly do when you have probably the best group of skill players in the league and the best coach in the league. So I mean, I think that efficiency continues. I think Purdy should be 7K in this spot. He was popular on about 3 or 4 of the recent slates to close the regular season. And he came through every time. Against Philly, 32 fantasy points. Against Seattle, 25. And then against Arizona, 25. So he's treated people really well. And I think, the Baltimore game was a different story, but, that's a tougher matchup. I think people will be happy to go back to him here. I think he's a really good option. I'm gonna play some Purdy stacks in tournaments. I think they're pretty good because the receivers aren't going to be quite as owned as the other receivers on this slate. So I like Purdy stacks. Both the quarterbacks in that Lions Buccaneers game look pretty good.
That was my question for you. Who do you like between the two? They're priced almost exactly the same. Goff 6,300, Baker 6,000. Do you have a preference between the two?
I think I prefer Baker.
Okay.
I think he hits a ceiling more often. Like, it's weird to say, but they're the ones likely to be chasing.
I was going to say, he's a little less game script dependent. If Detroit gets up, they're going to probably run the ball a ton in the second.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Exactly. That's what they want to do.
Yeah.
Baker 6K, really like that. I think the other reason I prefer it is it's just cheaper than, if you play Goff, you have to play Amon-Ra, who's the most expensive. And then it's really tough to afford CMC as well. So I have some interest in Baker.
How do you feel about Lamar and Allen, the two expensive guys? I think you were about to go there, but how do you feel about the two expensive guys?
I could get behind either of them. If I had to pick one, it'd be Lamar. Look, they're very similar in that they both are elite runners, and that gives them massive upside. And the ability to hit a ceiling in pretty much any spot. I think I would side with Lamar just because I feel more confident that the Ravens are going to score 4 touchdowns than the Bills, and you just hope Lamar's a part of all 4 of those, I guess. I don't know. How do you feel?
I really like Lamar this week. I think that the setup is so good. It's one of those games like, even if they're up, I think he'll be involved with stuff. And you're right. Like, they have a good chance to score 4 touchdowns. You just hope that it's not 1-yard Gus Edwards touchdowns. Like, everything outside like the 5, you feel pretty good that Lamar's gonna be involved. Like, I don't see Gus Edwards breaking a 22-yard touchdown or Justice Hill also. And Hill had a bunch of targets last week. He did like 10 targets in the last game they played, something like that. He had 10 targets the final week against Pittsburgh. So they used him out of the backfield. Andrew's back. Lamar has weapons. Like, we've always struggled with Lamar's receivers, and I don't think it's really as much of a struggle this year. They're playing pretty well. I love Zay Flowers. I like the price on Zay Flowers. He's only 6,000 on DraftKings. Like, he's easy to play. I really like Lamar this week. I think for me, it's going to be Lamar, or then I go down to the love or the Purdy, Mayfield, Goff group, all kind of 6,000. They're all kind of grouped together. Yeah, so I think that's where I'm going. I think I'll go Lamar over Allen, so that kind of locks him out. How do you feel about Jordan Love in DFS going against the Niners D? Obviously has been on fire, but going on the road here, outdoors, maybe a little wet, could be a little bit of a different animal.
Yeah, don't feel quite as good about it, but if I was, playing a bunch of lineups in like the Millie Maker or like that's the $3 tournament, if I'm playing 20, 30 or more lineups, then yeah, I'll play some Jordan Love just because nobody's going to play him. And
And if I'm them, I make sure I take 4 or 5 shots at some point in this game. Like I think that's the way that in a game where you're a big underdog, you want some variance, you want some big shot plays. I think you have to take that. Maybe go away from Charvarius Ward, go to the other side. But they've got so many weapons, and I think you got to make sure you take a couple shots. Niners are playing a backup safety. The other corner has kind of been rotating in and out. You've got some Diamador Lenore, some Ambry Thomas. I think if you're the Packers, you got to take some shots. And from DFS, I like that when they're going to try and hit some big plays at least.
Yeah, it's I agree. It's just so tough to decide which Packer now. They got
yeah.
4 receivers now that legitimately it could be any of them. We saw Dobbs last week and Reed. Obviously, they're the most likely, but Christian Watson back now. He played almost half the snaps last week. Wicks there too, playing almost half the snaps. So, the 4 receivers, 2 tight ends. It's tough to pick which Packer if you're going to do that.
Is C.J. Stroud the least owned quarterback on this slate? I don't know if you look at percentage at all much, but it feels like he's probably last.
I mean, pretty much no one's going to click him. Yeah, he's last for sure.
And it's hard because, they're just so banged up on receiver. I mean, they got it done, obviously, last week, and Nico Collins is awesome. I have to think that John Harbaugh makes sure that tries to make anybody but Nico Collins beat them in the pass game.
I agree.
So I think it's fun. I mean, you could play 6, 7, 8 of these guys pretty easily. I think that 6 to 6,500 range, you have so many options. You got 4 guys there. Does Mahomes get lost a little bit? He's 6,800. Like, how do you feel that people are going to play him? I mean, it seems weird to say people aren't going to play Patrick Mahomes under 7,000, but I don't think a ton of people get there this week.
No, I don't think a ton of people get there either. Like, see him being probably around 10% or so. Maybe slightly higher just because Stroud is there and no one's going to play him. So Mahomes kind of stands alone in that range. So you're right. Like some people will play him, but not too many.
Yeah, I think he goes pretty under-owned too, which is, obviously if you play a lot of lineups, it's an interesting thing because you get Patrick Mahomes at 8% or something like that. Like, just takes a 3-touchdown old school Patrick Mahomes game. Rashee Weiss is, I would say breaking out, but already has broken out. He looked awesome again last week. And, he's got an easy weapon to pair him with. You can play Kelsey too. You play both of them and really go for the big game. There's a lot of different ways to attack that. Let's talk about running back because I think it's really interesting because there's a huge separator here. And you talked about Purdy and how much you like him this week. But a lot of it depends on what you do with McCaffrey. He's 8,800 on Fanduel. And then the next running back is 6,700, Aaron Jones. On Fanduel, McCaffrey is 10,800 and no one else is above 7,500. There's a $3,300 difference between McCaffrey and the next highest running back on Fanduel. It's a huge chasm there. I think that if you don't play McCaffrey, you can play whoever you want the rest of the slate. You don't even have to think about salary. If you do play him, then it gets a little complicated. If you playing him in Amon-Ra gets tough. What are you doing with McCaffrey this week? I know you like Purdy. Does that mean you're not playing McCaffrey? You're going to play both of them. Obviously, the biggest name running back on the slate. What are you doing with him? So I think it kind of affects what you do with the rest of your roster.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards playing quite a bit of Christian McCaffrey.
On DraftKings, I think they lean the heck out of him this week.
Me too. And first thing about the salary. So we're used to him being anywhere from 92 to 95 or 9,600. Yeah. And even when he was, 9,500, he projected great, the best on the slate a lot of times. And I heard many times that McCaffrey should be over 10K. What is DraftKings doing? He should be over 10K. And now he's below 9K for no reason. So he's clearly underpriced, I think, on DraftKings specifically. Fanduel is a different story. There's a big gap between the running backs. It's not quite as big on DraftKings, but just in a vacuum, McCaffrey's underpriced. So yeah, for sure playing him in, cash games and small field stuff. Yeah. I kind of think he's the first guy in. Just a massive floor, massive ceiling.
Yeah, I think Kyle wants to get up early and just pound McCaffrey all day long. I think he would like to do. They've done that against the Packers in the past in playoff games. I think Niners rush O against Packers rush D is the biggest advantage for them in this game. I think they're going to feed McCaffrey. You see a lot of Debo run plays too. I think that they're going to try and establish one early and finish the game with it late. So I think that they, unless they get down and turn the ball over early, I think you're going to see a ton of runs, especially in the second half.
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry.
Oh no, you're good. I mean, I think you're right. And I looked at projections and then the value, of that, and I think you're right. I think he's pretty significantly underpriced compared to everybody else. I think I'm just going to kind of slot him in every lineup and work around it that way and go different directions. I think you can play him and Purdy if you want to. I mean, he obviously gets the ball in the backfield. Niners are the highest implied total. You mentioned that earlier. I don't think there's any problem playing both of them. I probably will go different direction there at quarterback, but. I think McCaffrey at 800 on DraftKings is a pretty easy one to get to this week. So what do you do with the rest of this glut? I think that there's this range of like 7-8 guys between 5,700 and 6,700. We got I'll go real quick. Aaron Jones, Jahmyr Gibbs, Rashad White are 67, 66, 65. Pacheco 64, James Cook 63, Montgomery 61, Singletary 57. We can talk about cheaper guys down the board if you want to in a second, but we've got this glut of guys. I think a lot of people will go McCaffrey and then one of these guys. So this group right here will be a big differentiator between teams that win and teams that don't win. There's going to be some stinkers in here. There's going to be some big games. Where are you finding the big game this week in this group?
Yeah, it's tough. A lot of similar options, 5 or 6 guys right in that range. And I would say no one that clearly stands out. I think the most popular probably ends up being Pacheco.
Okay.
I think you look at he's had 25 touches in back-to-back games, still involved in the passing game. He feels like a safe click, the Lions guys will be under-owned as always. It's just tough to click them on this slate when they're splitting the work and you have other guys like Rashad White there who has a great role. Jones even. People, they're not going to like that matchup with San Fran, so it'll keep him, not as popular as he might have been. But
by the way, sneaky, that is the way to get the Niners right there. The run defense is the one little thing in this monster team that has not been very good and really been struggling in the second half of the season. So I think that the Niners run D is the one weakness in this game on that side.
Yeah, so he's one of my favorite options for tournaments because I don't think he'll be crazy popular, and I just think he's great in San Francisco stacks. I mentioned that I didn't have a lot of confidence clicking one of the Packers receivers just because it's so tough, but it makes it easy to just use Aaron Jones instead. Pacheco, I think, he feels safe for cash games, but I like James Cook for tournaments. I think he'll be lower owned than these other guys. I think he was great against the Chiefs in the first game. He had 5 catches for 80-some yards and a touchdown. They stopped going to him in the second half, which was a little puzzling after he just dominated the first half. But still for 6,300, I think he's pretty good. The argument for fading McCaffrey is that this range is so big that you could have 2 of these guys score 20-plus points, and that could nullify McCaffrey because we'll get to receiver in a second, but there's about 5 or 6 receivers that are in this mid-range where you can afford one less of them if you play McCaffrey or one more of them if you don't play McCaffrey. So, it is doable.
Yeah, my guy in this range is James Cook this week. I think that we saw last week, we talked about how, Miami's one chance was to run the ball. They just did it poorly. I think that you can just kind of toss out the weather just really got in their heads. They only ran for 66 total yards on 19 touches. But still, I think that, Casey's better against the pass. I think that Buffalo's going to, go Cook here. He had 22 touches last week. You mentioned the really good game against Kansas City the first time. He had 4 targets last week. He didn't do much with them. He only had 5 yards, I think, on him. But I just really like Cook this week at the price, 6,300. I think that they're going to get him involved. I think he kind of works if Buffalo's trailing or Buffalo's winning, which is really nice in this game. It's a close game, so I think he's very involved the whole time. I just think they've gotten to the point in Buffalo where they're going to use James Cook. We saw that stretch earlier when after Ken Dorsey got fired, where they used him a lot. I think they're going to lean on him this week. He's my favorite guy in this range.
Yeah, I think me too. Let Cook cook.
Yeah.
Ever since the first game of the season, he's looked like a special running back to me. They haven't really used him a ton, as much as you'd like this season. But I agree. I think they're gonna lean on him here in the important spots.
I do too. I mean, I know that Ty Johnson had like 8 carries last week, but I think that's pretty minor, and they were up in that game. But Detroit guys, you mentioned they will be under owned. Do you have a preference between them? Gibbs 6,600, Montgomery 61. It's tough, right? Because they're favored in this game. Because I would almost always go Gibbs because he's just more explosive, and I love watching him play. But it feels like this week maybe it's Montgomery. They're 6.5-point favorites. He looked good last. They clearly use him in the goal line. They like him in pass protection situations. I think that the Tampa Bay, pass rush will be the one thing that Detroit's like, we got to make sure that we keep Goff upright, and maybe that's a little more Montgomery than normal. But I think I'd actually, maybe the first time in a while, I think I'd go Montgomery for the $500 less this week.
Interesting. All those reasons make sense. Just, normally I like to avoid Vita Vea and that run defense.
By the way, Vita Vea stopped the tush push last week.
That was wow. Yeah, that was impressive. That was impressive.
I knew the game was over once that happened. I was like, oh boy, we just burst the bubble there.
So yeah, no one's going to play Montgomery though. So that's interesting because I do think he could score a couple touchdowns. My lean would be Gibbs. I just feel like he's more explosive, and
he's so explosive. He's really fun. I love Gibbs.
But I agree that there's a lot of scenarios where he just gets 10 touches, like a lot of scenarios. But he does have the upside to catch a couple passes and break a big one. So I don't know. I guess I'm fine with either of them because neither will be that popular.
Yeah, this feels to me like a Montgomery setup week, but Gibbs can obviously hit a big play anytime. Anybody cheap at running back you're going to play? I mean, we talked with Devin Singletary's 5,700. Been playing well, but at Baltimore, 9.5-point dogs. It's a pretty tough setup here. Justice Hill had 10 targets in the last game against Pittsburgh. He's 4,800. You could go for Dalvin Cook at 4,000, breaking out in his first playoff game with Baltimore. Is there anybody down here cheaper? I don't think I'm getting anybody down here. Is there anybody you think that could be a break a big play kind of dart at running back?
No, I don't think so. I think people will play Singletary. I think he's fine just because he's cheaper than those other guys, and the usage is just so good. So I do think it makes sense. But
yeah, I mean they were blowing that game out last week, and Dameon Pierce still only had 3 carries. Like it's clearly Singletary is the guy in that backfield, and that's playoff time with limited games. That's important.
Yeah, it is. I could have maybe got behind one of these Baltimore guys, but the Dalvin Cook signing is just really annoying, and it seems like he might even play a little. He probably will.
Yeah, I'm not doing it. You're just hoping for the two 1-yard touchdowns, and I just hate just kind of betting on that.
No, I'm not doing that.
There are a lot of big name receivers this week. Let's hit those. But first note from our sponsors at Fanduel. You tackle $1 million and millions of prizes all playoffs long in Fanduel fantasy contests. If you're new to fantasy, there's no better time to get in on the action because right now new customers get a 100% deposit match up to $100. Playing fantasy for huge cash prizes on Fanduel is fun and exciting. Just draft your lineup and watch the team move up the leaderboard. We talked earlier that playing Christian McCaffrey, there's a really tough call because he's so expensive. So Fanduel is some interesting builds this week that that chasm at running back really causes there. Plus, on Fanduel, you can choose from full slate contests featuring multiple games, single game contests, season-long best ball contests, beginner-only contests, all which are great for learning the ropes and more. And when you win, you get paid instantly. So kick off football season with 100% deposit match up to $100. Go to FanDuel.com and start playing for huge cash prizes today. So, Ryan, you mentioned that there are a kind of a big chunk of receivers in this mid-range, too. We've got Amon-Ra St. Brown's at 8,200, but then there's a bunch of guys between, say, 6,800 and 7,700. We got Debo, Mike Evans, Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Ayuk, Rashee Rice. How do you figure out which guys to play here? It's kind of like running back. We've got this like big glut of options. I think these are a lot better. I think all these are options that we like playing. We find ourselves playing a lot. Who are kind of your couple favorites in this range?
Tough. So first I'll take ownership into consideration. I think St. Brown will be pretty popular, and I think Rice will be pretty popular.
I think so too.
It's not going to be crazy because these other options are all pretty good, but yeah, I do think those guys stand out. So Rice, I think, starting at the bottom is probably the cash game play. He's cheapest, and he projects the best. He's been great. He's sort of succeeded every week. He's coming off a career high in receiving yards in back-to-back weeks. What I've been impressed with is they line him up everywhere, almost like CD Lamb. So like it doesn't matter if the other team has good cornerbacks or whatever. He's in the slot. He's on both sides. He's in motion. So they're like trying to get him the ball. So feel pretty comfortable with Rice. Now these other guys, like nobody's going to play Deebo Samuel. So I think it's an interesting tournament play. And not many people are going to play Stephon Diggs, who's all the way down to 7K. So I don't know if I'm necessarily going to either, but I think there's some merit because it's cheaper than we've ever seen him, and still nobody's going to play him. I like Ayuk better. He'll be slightly more popular, but not as popular as Rice. I still think you can get leverage there. I think Ayuk is great in Purdy stacks. And then I really like Mike Evans, who I think goes a little bit overlooked as well. He had those 2 big drops last week. Yeah. One would have been a long touchdown. So, yeah, I have some interest in Evans too. I think, that's how I feel about the range. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I think we're kind of we're in lockstep with much. I love Rashee Rice too, 6,800. Feels a little cheap. 8 for $130 last week, 12 targets. The Bills secondary mentioned before is banged up. He's Mahomes' guy right now. I know that Kelsey still get a lot of targets, but Kelsey's kind of in the middle of the field, dropping passes here and there, but catching some also. Hit a couple horrible drops last week again. But love Rice 6,800. I really like Mike Evans. You mentioned him at the end. Nice matchup and nice game script. I think it's pretty safe that Tampa Bay's gonna be throwing the ball in this game no matter what. Like maybe if they get way up, but I don't see that happening in Detroit. Even if they have a lead, I think they throw even going into the fourth quarter. If they're behind, they're going to throw a lot. The way to beat Detroit is big, explosive pass plays, and I think that's what Mike Evans does his whole career. I mean, he was only 3 for 48 last week, but you mentioned the drop touchdown. Like that should have been a huge line. He should have been like 5 for $120 and a touchdown. I had the over on his receiving yards. I'm not bitter about that at all. But that was rough. That one play would have. He had a 21-yard catch early. I'm like, all right, we just need a 40-yarder. Boom, and he dropped it. So. I lean way more Deebo than Ayuk this week. I love Brandon Ayuk, but I think that in the playoffs, the reins come off Deebo. So you got all the pass up, but I think he's going to have 4 or 5 carries, and he's going to have kind of those sweeps near the end zone. They love running that play to get him in the end zone. I just think that he is. I think Shanahan's going in this game making sure that Deebo gets the ball in his hand on a certain number of plays, and I think that Ayuk is awesome. He could get a bunch of catches. Kittle's awesome, get a bunch of catches, but that kind of builds within the offense. I think there'll be plays set up for Deebo to touch the ball. I think Deebo sets the tone for them in a lot of stuff. I think they're going to want to be tough in this game too. I think they want Deebo to run some people over. I think Deebo's get some touches early, some touches late if they're winning. I really like Deebo at 7,700. And I think you're right. I don't think anybody's going to play him because I think you just kind of go up easy to Amon-Ra. You go down easy to Evans. You go down easy to Diggs, Ayuk, Rice. There's so many options here. I think people are going to see 7,700 for Deebo and probably get away from playing that. And I really like him this week.
You sold me. I'm in.
Just when they get in big games and situations like this, it feels like they make sure that Deebo gets touches. They did against Philadelphia. He had 3 touchdowns in that game. I think that they want Deebo and C-Mac to touch the ball as much as possible this week. Makes
perfect sense.
If you drop down lower, I think Zay Flowers is an interesting name in here at 6,000. He's emerged as the main guy in Baltimore. The bye week was big for them. He was a little banged up. I think he's fully healthy now. But there's other names down here. You got Godwin at 6,300. We talked about how we like Baker. We like the Tampa Bay pass offense, so Godwin works in there. And then you've got Green Bay guys. Romeo Doubs gets the big bump up in price. He's 5,600 off the huge week. Jaden Reed is 5,200 off the no catch week. Who do you like in this range? Are you with me on Flowers? You like somebody else? What do you feel about these these lower mid-range guys?
I'm with you on Flowers. Flowers is for sure my favorite. I thought he would, be a little bit more popular than it looks like he's going to be. I
would too. He kind of stuck out to me when I first looked at salaries.
Yeah, it seems like he's going overlooked a bit. He doesn't project that great. Not entirely sure why. I really like him. For me, he sticks out in this range. I think he has the most upside for sure. I mean, look at his game log, 20 plus fantasy points in 4 of the last 5. And yeah, I have more interest in him than these other guys in the range. I just can't really click a Packer. You have Dobbs there. I think people might go back to him just because they saw the massive game last week. I think any of them are fine. Don't get me wrong. I just don't really have the confidence to do it in like a single entry. It's just they spread the ball around so much now when they're all healthy. And then Godwin. Yeah, Tampa too has started to worry me because, Trey Palmer's involved.
Yep.
This David Moore caught balls. Kate Otten drew 11 targets.
Yeah. Crazy.
So, yeah, I used to really like Tampa because you'd figure it'd just all go to Evans or Godwin. It's not quite like that anymore. So, yeah, Zay Flowers for me in this range.
Yeah, for me, it's either Zay Flowers below Godwin or Rice and Ayuk above Godwin. I don't think I get there either. Just you mentioned, I was going to point out the 11 Otten targets. It was kind of wild. I think if I go Packers receiver, I'm going Reed or Watson. Reed's 5,200. I like him off the bounce back. Watson's 4,200. I feel like Watson's the ceiling guy in this offense. If the Packers are going to hit big plays and pull an upset, I think it's like, you got to get Christian Watson involved a little bit. He only had 1 target last week. I think that's got to change for them if they want to try and win this game. So I could see playing him, but it's a good segue into cheaper guys. We've got a couple of Packers down under 5,000. We have Odell Beckham, and then you've got Khalil Shakir for Buffalo, who had the sweet touchdown last week. And Gabe Davis still has not practiced. It's Friday morning now, so maybe he practiced today, but not practiced yesterday. Seems like he's trending towards not playing. Josh Reynolds down here. We talked about last week. We talked about Reynolds and Jameson Williams. I like Jameson Williams more. I was wrong there. He only had 2 targets. Josh Reynolds had 7 targets last week against his old team in the Rams. He was really involved in that game.
Yeah, he was 7 targets in back-to-back weeks. I think him and Jameson Williams, the 2 Lions, are probably the best. Shakir as well, assuming Gabe Davis is out. Those 3. Yeah. I'm with you. I was on Williams. I played both the Lions last week, but I had more Jameson Williams. You can't give up now. What if you miss? You don't want to miss it. You know what I mean? So
I still feel like there's one big gigantic long catch coming in these playoffs at some point.
Yeah, me too. And he has the upside to see 5 or 6 targets for sure. I mean, he's been playing a lot. He played 70% of the snaps last week.
It's frustrating because he's number 9 and Reynolds is number 8. It's really hard to tell the difference in when they catch the ball. So I always hate that, but obviously not a real reason. But every time I'm like, oh, there's Williams, I'm like, oh, Reynolds again. I was like, damn. But for a 4-game slate, there are an insane number of workable options at receiver, both in the mid-range, expensive, and cheap. It's a wild slate of there are a lot of stud receivers on this slate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough.
It's fun. I think I go Shakir if Davis doesn't play. Kind of my favorite guy. Just getting, he only had 3 targets last week, but he's pretty active. He has been kind of late in the year. They've been using him more. The touchdown catch was really nice. And then either Detroit guy I think are workable too. I obviously we like that game from a total perspective. So I think both those guys work. I tend to Reynolds is probably the floor guy and safer, but I think Williams is the one that has the bigger ceiling. Tight end is pretty stacked this week too. We've got Travis Kelce, you got Sam Laporta, George Kittle, 3 of what I'll call them just to put a blank on the best 5 tight ends in football, something like that. You got Dalton Kincaid, who's rolling right now. His 3 best games of the year have all come in the last 3 games. He's 4,800. We got Mark Andrews back. So if you're going to top 5 tight ends, he's obviously in that mix when he's healthy too. He's 5,000. We got some cheap guys in Green Bay. Luke Musgrave had a big game last week. That was really good defense by Dallas on that catch. I thought he was literally standing by himself without anybody within 15 yards of him. It was crazy. You got Kate Otten at 3,500 who had 11 targets last week. We just talked about what the heck is what doing tight end this week? Is there a surprising number of options for a 4-game slate?
It's tough. Yeah, I think you can make a good argument for a lot of them. I don't know. I guess I don't really have a clear take at the moment. I think Kelce looks better than he has pretty much all season. Not from a football standpoint. You mentioned the drops and just everything else, but he's cheaper than we've ever seen him. And I mean, he had 10 targets last week. He had 10 targets in the Week 14 game against the Bills. So I mean, I feel safest about Kelce.
And they're really a two pass catcher offense right now.
Yeah.
Which right. You talked about Tampa, how much you like that. I think that's kind of the case here. You look at the game log, and like there's a bunch of guys who had 2 and 3 targets, but Kelsey 10, Rice 12, and no one else more than 3. Like they're a pretty narrow passing tree for a Chiefs offense right now.
They really are, and you're right. That seems like very sticky. I would almost bet on that happening again. You know,
too.
like when yeah. So
I think he trusts those 2 guys and kind of doesn't trust anybody else.
I agree.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do like Kelsey. Nobody's going to play Laporta.
Nope.
He seemed healthy enough last week. Caught the touchdown. Was out there quite a bit. I mean, nobody's going to play him, so I guess I get it. I like Kittle at 5,200. I think he makes perfect sense in Purdy stacks. I think Kittle and Kelsey will be similarly popular as where people go if they want to spend money. And then I think the popular punt is going to be the aforementioned Cade Otton after he drew 11 targets last week, and it just sets up for a pretty good matchup. Kincaid, but you will have to see about the Baltimore stuff. I don't know. Like, I'm just not sure I could play Mark Andrews. I don't know. Like, what do you think about Mark Andrews? Like, if Mark Andrews plays, can we play him?
I think it's at the point where it makes it so I can't play either of them, to be honest. Like, Likely's 4,700, Andrews 5,000. I think I'm gonna actually play him full snaps. Like, I think he's gonna be out there, which means that if he's out there, he'll be in there in the red zone, which is annoying if you want to take Likely. And I think the Likely's gonna play some too. He's flashed well. I don't think they're gonna want to overwork Andrews. I think it kind of makes it so I don't play either guy, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. That's how I felt. So then Kincaid's just been really impressive. Great draft pick.
My favorite tight end at the price this week is Kincaid.
Oh, I'll let you talk about him then, because he's going to go a little bit overlooked. I think those other 3 guys are going to be more popular.
You're talking to an elite quarterback that is like leaning on this guy right now. I mean, you see, what do you have last week? He had 6 targets. 3 for 59, a touchdown, 6 targets. I think that we talk about narrow passing trees, and I mean, Diggs had 9 targets, Kincaid had 6. Then you drop all the way down to like James Cook had 4, Shakir had 3. But I think that Kincaid is quietly the second option in this pass game right now. You're going to get me Josh Allen in a game where, I know we talk about the total's not high, but they're going to have to score at some point here. Like the Chiefs are going to score some points. Like the Chiefs offense is going to find a way to get some. And you look at Kincaid, I mean, he's got 87 to 84 yards the last 2 games of the week, or 2 games of the regular season, his best 2 games of the year. And he scores a touchdown in the playoff game. I know that Dawson Knox is annoying if you have Kincaid because he caught a touchdown, but he had 2 targets, so you use him in the red zone. Kincaid's the middle of the field guy, and the red zone, they have both of them in there. I just think 4,800, I think he's close enough to Kittle that people will go up to Kittle. I think Kelsey's low enough. A lot of people are going to play that too. I think Kincaid kind of goes a little bit lost here. You mentioned the punt options. I think people will play Musgrave. I think people will play Otton. I think Kincaid gets lost in the middle, and you give me someone at 4,800 in this offense with this quarterback, with this usage the last 3 weeks. He's my favorite play here. I think by a pretty good amount at tight end.
Again, you sold me. Yeah, I'm totally on board. He's been a great draft pick for them. He's almost Josh Allen's favorite target.
Yeah.
Again, like it makes sense. It's easier to look for a tight end. Just think of everything under pressure in these tough spots, the shorter passes. It's easier to find a great tight end than it is to rely on a receiver. It just makes sense for Allen to continue to feed him in these spots, and he's so talented. So yeah, love Kincaid. The Packers, Tucker Kraft played 80% of the snaps, and Musgrave played 27%.
Was it that big of a difference? Well, I know we talked about it last week, and I asked you how's it get split, and I think we like Musgrave more because he can hit the big play and he's a receiver. But that's it's hard to play someone who played 27% of the snaps.
Right. So, do we think it can get up to 50-50? Maybe that's probably about as maybe you can take a chance on Musgrave. You mentioned he's just like a bigger play upside, really talented in the passing game. So I don't mind it, but don't be surprised if he's not out there that often.
Yeah, that's frustrating too. And I think Tucker Kraft is a really good blocker too, and they're going to want to run the ball some of this game. So that impacts a lot. Real football does come into play there. So maybe Cade Otton with his 11 targets makes more sense in that range. You got Dawson Knox down there too, but I mentioned you're kind of hoping for just a touchdown. They use him in the red zone. He only had 2 targets last week. I'd go Otton over Knox for sure.
Yeah, totally agree. I have no problem playing some Cade Otton this week. I think you can play double tight end lineups if you want.
I did my better team this week. I did it last week. I had Ferguson and Musgrave on a couple teams. It was really nice.
Perfect. Yeah.
I messed up at quarterback. I forget who I played in that slate, but I messed up quarterback. But the tight ends were great. That's all that matters there. Sell me on a defense. Tell me who you're playing this week. It was funny. We talked last week about, we like the Cleveland D getting after Stroud, but we mentioned
you nailed it.
On the other side, Flacco's going to make some mistakes. I don't think we had 2 pick sixes on our card, but they were definitely the play. Teams that won money last week all had Houston defense. You look at if you look at that slate, you look at all the top winners, all of them. The Houston defense dominated that slate in terms of against the other defenses. Find me the one this week. I think this week's pretty tough. You've got Baltimore, you've got the Niners, you've got the Lions as favorites at home, 35, 34, and 3,300 respectively. I think people will look at Bills, Chiefs and see the lower total. Maybe you get to play in there, but what do you do in finding the defense can make a big play this week?
Yeah, I said there's no defense that stands out. So
I don't think so either.
So who are people going to go to? The Chiefs
I assume Ravens, right?
Well, yeah, Ravens up top and then Bills. I'm sorry. Bills will be the cheap defense only because you look and they're at home and they're cheap and the total's low and people, their defense has done pretty well this season. So I feel it feels like a safer click than those other ones. But yeah, Baltimore would feel the safest up top. Yeah. I mean, they've been one of the better defenses in the league all season from a fantasy perspective too.
You have to think at some point they rattle CJ Stroud some, right?
Yeah. And Houston has the lowest total on the board, by a considerable margin. So yeah, I think the Ravens probably stand out. But again, like you mentioned last week, the Packers were the second highest scoring defense. They scored 13 at minimum price, but they would have been the second highest scoring defense if they scored 8. You mentioned none of the defenses did well. Yep. There's pretty much all good quarterbacks on this slate, pretty much all good offenses. It's not going to shock you if all the defenses score similar amounts. So the Ravens and the Bills are going to be the 2 most popular. So getting off of them in tournaments seems perfectly fine. From a talent perspective, just look at the 49ers. I mean, they seem like a great pivot.
Except the combination of Dan Marino and Brett Favre's playing quarterback.
Right.
Dude, some of those off his back foot passes are insane and on target and darts. Love looks awesome.
I'm not even kidding. He looked like Aaron Rodgers a couple times. A few of those throws were like Aaron Rodgers throws, and it was
I want to be clear, we're not calling him Aaron Rodgers, but he had a couple plays. You're like, holy crap, that's a Rodgers play. It's wild.
Right, and I just never really expected to see that. So then to see it multiple times, encouraging.
So here's my thing: I would play Chiefs over Bills. I think that they're a better defense, and I think that if you're going to go for upside, Josh Allen's prone to some turnovers. And I would actually go Lions over the Niners defense. I think Lions at 300. I think Baker's going to have to throw a lot. We talked about we like that, but I think that brings in some mistakes. Aiden Hutchinson playing well. They've been rushing the quarterback really well. I'd go Lions at home at 3,300 over Niners and Ravens. Ravens I like, but I think just percentage-wise, I go Lions and Chiefs this week. 2,700 for Chiefs, 3,300 for Lions on Draftkings. Those would be my 2 plays that I do like, and I think there'd be a little less owned the options right next to them.
I think those are 2 good calls.
I might just go Lions on teams, and I think that 3,200 is not expensive. I think that probably works best for me.
I think that makes sense. I'll just say I might end up with some Tampa Bay Buccaneers, only because it's a slate where none of the defenses stand out. They're the cheapest. Nobody's going to play them. We saw how many pick sixes last week, and I've seen Goff throw plenty of pick sixes. So why not?
If Tampa can find a way to get up early, Goff is a guy that I think you can rattle a little bit. He's not been very rattled this year. I get it, but we've seen in the past, if he gets rushed, he does not like that. The Niners defense has killed him for years because they just always find a way to rush him. If the Niners and Lions end up playing next week, obviously they're both favorites. That could be a really interesting matchup because the Niners have been really good against Jared Goff and over their history with him. But I think it's an interesting call because the Bucs have some guys on D too. They're an athletic, talented defense that if they find a way to get up early, they could force some mistakes. I do like that play.
Cool. Yeah, Chiefs make sense too. I think you're right about that for sure.
Josh
better than the Bills.
Allen's awesome, but he turns the ball over sometimes.
Exactly right, and the Chiefs are better and healthier than the Bills defense.
these defenses are all so close that it's going to be one punt return, one pick six that makes a difference. And it's hard to really, scout for that or analyze that. You're just kind of hoping for game script, hoping for some mistakes, and they actually capitalize on the mistake.
I mean, yeah, you'd love 7 or 8 points.
Yeah, agreed. Anything else you want to talk about? Anybody else? Do you have any teams? Do you have any non-Chiefs teams pulling an upset this week?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Packers, Bucks, Texans.
No, but I think, at least in my opinion, I think Tampa has the best chance. But no,
I do too. I think we both thought Tampa was going to win last week. I don't remember what we said, but I think we thought Tampa was going to win. It's funny. I mentioned last week if you give me 7.5 on the Packers, I like them against Dallas. Obviously, didn't need the 7.5. I think that Packers-Niners line is too high. It's hard for me to be unbiased in this game. I'd be disappointed and surprised if the Niners lost this game at home as a 10-point favorite. But I do think that I think like middle of the third quarter, I think it'll be a little squirrely. I think the Packers will be in this game maybe a little bit longer than people think.
Well, I hope you're right. I hope it's squirrely in the second half. That's all I can really hope for.
And if you get it there, then anybody can win. Like that's all you want as a 10-point underdog. I think they've got enough. They've clearly got a puncher's chance. Like their offense. I mean, who knows? The Niners defense may shut them down. They may make Love uncomfortable. They may make some mistakes. But like the Packers offense has enough to hang in this game for a while. I do think the Niners will score, but when you get games like that, you turn the ball over once or twice. That changes a lot. I mean, it happened was that 95 where the Niners were big favorites and they had a fumble for pick six or a fumble six early. It was actually at that game, and then Favre just took over after that, and it was rough. But the Packers have a puncher's chance. I have a hard time seeing the Texans win this game, but I think Packers are in there a little bit longer than people think. I think the Bucs have a chance to win the game too.
Yeah, me too. Can't wait to watch.
Chiefs or Bills? Who are you picking?
Bills.
I think the Chiefs are going to win.
Okay.
I don't want the Chiefs to win. I'm rooting for the Bills. I like the Bills. I'm kind of over the Chiefs, but man, I just I worry about all the injuries on defense.
Yeah, I get it. Everything sort of everything would point to the Chiefs. I'm just going to go for that Josh Allen Superman game.
Yeah, Josh Allen at home. The crowd will be beyond insane for that game.
Mm-hmm.
They've been waiting for Chiefs to have to come to there in a playoff. The craziest stat of the whole weekend is that there are Mahomes. I think it's his 15th playoff game. It's his first game on the road. It's either been neutral site Super Bowl or home games in Arrowhead every single game, which is the most insane stat ever. It's just crazy. This is his first game on the road.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I'm rooting for the Bills, but I think the Chiefs are going to find a way to pull it out. I'm just so scarred by all the Chiefs winning all these games. But I want to thank everybody for listening to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. We always appreciate that. If you have any questions, hit us up on Twitter. Ryan's at Ryan Belongia, Belongia. I am at Scott Jenstad. Looking forward to these games this weekend. Ryan, good luck to your Packers. Hope they hang in for a little bit and then lose late.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Good luck, everybody.
Take care, everybody. Have a really good weekend. We're back at you talking championship weekend next weekend.